How do we learn languages well? What is comprehensible input that everyone keeps talking about? Why is it a good way to learn languages? I'm going to talk about all those things and a little bit more, hopefully in 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes on my watch. Ready? 3, 2, 1, let's go. My name is Andrew Morehouse. I'm a language teacher, a small business owner who helps people achieve fluency in ancient languages, as well as a person who speaks 5 to 6 languages, depending on how you define proficiency. We're going to talk today about comprehensible input, which is one of the more effective ways to achieve high levels of fluency in a fun and compelling way, ideally. So, before we talk about comprehensible input, let's break down these two notions. So input, what do we mean by input? Every language is divided into two sort of constituent parts, input and output. Input are the ways we take in language, output the ways we put it out. So input will be reading and listening, output, writing, and, speaking. Reading, listening, writing, speaking. These are your inputs. These are your outputs. So far, so good? Okay. Input that is comprehensible is input that we can understand. To what degree, though? So we want comprehensibility anywhere from 90 to 98%, depending on what sort of studies you look at. Oh, the percentage sign is on the wrong side. Ignore that. Right, so 90 to 98% comprehensibility. But what's the point? What do we do? So what we want is we want something that when we read it or when we listen to it, we can understand 90 to 98% of what is going on. How do you achieve comprehensibility if you don't know the language yet? How can something be comprehensible if you don't know it? There's a number of ways we make comprehensibility happen. Translation is one of those ways, right? If I show you this in English is a marker. In Latin, you'd call it calamus. If I say marker, calamus, you have a translation there. I also could just demonstrate or show, right? Calamus. Calamus est. Hic est calamus. Right? This is Latin that I'm doing right now, by the way, to demonstrate some comprehensible input. Right? That is something that is comprehensible. A major tenet of language learning is not that things are just comprehensible, but also that they are compelling. Right? Things that are interesting to us. Me going hic est calamus might not be the most compelling thing to you. It might be. It depends on your motivators. Right? So the goal is that you are taking things that are input and you are doing 90 to 98% comprehensibility, and you are doing it in huge quantities. There are some studies that suggest that when you're reading a lot that is comprehensible to you, that you should be reading around 10,000 words a week. That's a lot of words, right? You can also listen to a similar amount, and it will help you. But the point is that these have to happen first. You absolutely have to have these in order to do these. You cannot write in a language in which you have not sufficiently heard or read enough of a structure or a set of words or whatever it might be or a topic. And you cannot speak without having sufficiently listened to or read a lot of things. And it takes time. It feels like it doesn't happen quick enough. But I promise you, it is one of the most effective ways to get you to levels of fluency in a language, is to be able to have communication happen. And that can be interpretive communication, where you're reading something or listening to something and just interpreting what's being said, right? It can be interpersonal communication, where you're speaking to somebody, or it can be presentational communication, in which you're transmitting a message to a large group of people. That's not the only definition of presentational, but whatever that might be. But when you're creating communication, and you're doing so in the target language, if you're listening and you're understanding, then that's step one. Right? That's so important. And a lot of times you'll hear people when they learn languages say, like, I understand everything you're saying, but I can't say anything back. That's okay. In the beginning, that's what it's like. And you just try to make the messages that you can, right? And it's okay if there are mistakes in them. There can be grammatical errors. We all make them. It's part of how it works. There's not even a lot of evidence that suggests explicit grammar instruction or explicit grammar knowledge helps or aids in the learning of a language to a significant degree. So this is basically, at its core, what comprehensible input is. I hope this was helpful. There's a lot more I could talk about, but we're just going to keep it to the bare bones at 5 minutes. Let's see how we did. 4, 3, 2, 1. Alrighty, folks. Take care. Walete. You could probably guess walete means goodbye based on context without knowing any Latin. Walete. I forgot to talk about Duolingo. I'll do that very fast. So Duolingo, the largest problem with it is that it doesn't have enough things that you can consume and input. A lot of it is drilling exercises for accuracy, which you often can't do without enough input in the language. So what do? Well, the one thing in Duolingo that is good is that in some of the languages, they've added stories. Those are the best thing that Duolingo has to offer. Do the stories. Those are good. And frankly, Duolingo could be good for meaning establishment. You know that kalamos pen thing? You can learn what a word means through Duolingo, then go listen to a podcast that has a lot of it. Let us know if you have any questions about podcasts or other resources for learning the language you want to learn. I might know of some. I might not, but I'll tell you if I do. Walete.